showing my redneck roots, as my grandma would always say, like, them's the rules. Them's the rules. You know, at my house, you put your plate away, you close the front door, you say, yes, sir, no, sir, like them's the rules. So these are my Abby, them's the rules. And we can dig into any of these a little bit more if they resonate with you. So cool. The first, and this is because it's most important for me, it is what I personally trip up on, and it is what I see most of my leaders trip up on, either with themselves or with their workforce. And the first is pick strengths over weaknesses. I think our society is so focused on, hey, you want to lose weight, or you want to sleep more, like, or you want to run faster, or you want to grow your career. Like, everything's about your weaknesses and what you can do better, instead of just taking a breath and thinking about, like, okay, this is what I'm really good at. So this is what I'm going to spend my time on. And this is what I'm going to delegate out. And that's true for a business too, right? Like, what are the business's core strengths? What makes them stand out? What do the customers rave about? Like, that is where more focus, energy, and time and resources should go, because that's really what's going to differentiate you as a leader or you as a company, instead of just always being focused on what's going wrong. You know, look at what the strengths are, because typically that's what is going to differentiate you and set you apart. So that's number one. Number two is probably, if you're not in HR, not going to be your number two if you're prioritizing these for yourself. But for me, it is, because this next rule is kind of what I base everything off of. And that is boxes over names. So many times I come in with leaders and they're like, I got to do my org chart. I'm like, okay, listen, the org chart is not saving lives. But if we need to do an org chart, by God, we're going to do an org chart. It's going to be the best damn org chart you've ever seen. But I always take them a step back and I'm like, okay, but we're starting with boxes over names. I don't want a single name in your org chart. I want you to, let's talk about the roles that you need and what you need them for, right? So we start with very basic functions. So we say, like, you have to have a finance function. You need to have an engineering function. You need to have a sales function or marketing. So whatever the specifics are. And then from that function, what is that function responsible for? Okay, we need a director to do this, or we need associates to do X, Y, and Z. And then once all the boxes are done, then you can start putting names in for the talent that you currently have, and you'll figure out what your gaps are, right? You're going to figure out who doesn't have a seat, and if there's potential there to grow them into one of those boxes, or like, ooh, turns out we got two people in this box. We need to, like, clarify who's doing what. And so that is a big mistake that I see a lot of leaders make. And the course correcting we do is, like, let's think about the names second. Let's start with the boxes. And it's kind of a segue into my the next rule. And I think this bleeds into a lot of why people think about things names over boxes, because most companies call themselves a family, right? And so my third rule is team over family. So you've got your strengths over weaknesses, you've got boxes over names, and then now you have your team over family. And the reason for that is that when you're building a team, you're focusing on professional relationships, clear expectations, accountability. And sometimes when you're treating your business like a family, that can lead to overlooking those performance issues, or avoiding difficult conversations, or making decisions based off of personal relationships rather than business needs. And so I do see that trickle over into that whole boxes over names conversation, but it trickles into a lot of things as well. Other than just that, you know, when I start looking at the life of a decision with a company, typically if you have this, we're a family mentality, there's always someone that your employees are working around, right? There's someone who's not doing their job, but you don't realize it. And they're kind of just working. It's just become the working norm for how they get things done. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. Then we're going to present it to so-and-so so that they're on board with it before we present it to the president, because they have to know this person likes it. But this, you know, all the politics that come in, or the gaps in this person's performance, because they're kind of just being treated as a family member and allowed to stay here and kind of suck up some of the energy. So that family mentality as you grow and scale just is very hard to do with a productive business. But
can I support you on that? I absolutely
yes,
see it all the time.
all the time.
All the time. Not only are they having the wrong people in the wrong seat,
Yeah.
they are accommodating ineptness, poor performance, demoralizes the high performer,
100%.
because they were here forever. They were here at the start of the business. They have institutional knowledge. They're part of the culture, and yet at the same time they're dragging everyone down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's always one or more of them.
Yeah, I actually have a story about this. Just
Yeah, let's
last
hear it.
week, somebody called me. This is their second time. I talked to them about 4 months ago. I gave them some advice. They didn't listen to me. So this founder/CEO called me again. Like, it's not working. We're not growing. Growth is 0%. We have, we're losing money. We have all these people. We haven't sold any new customers. I think I'm going to step down as a CEO, and I have this super nice guy. He's in a different country, but he's our sales leader. I think I'm going to make him the CEO because he's super nice and he's been here for a long time. So I said, so I thought you said growth rate is 0. How many deals did he close in the past 12 months? Because we didn't close any deal.
But
He
he's
didn't
so
close.
nice.
He's the only salesperson.
Nice.
Yes, he didn't close any sales deals. He's the sales leader, and he wants to put him as the CEO going forward. My exact words were, look, you need to start thinking about the sports team, high performance sports team. Like, think of Formula One, because that's just the in the news now. You're a Formula One race team head, and you need to stop thinking about, like, this is a family, this is a high performing sports team. Who would you put in charge? And unless you change your mindset, this is not gonna. So I agree 100%. Team versus family.
Yeah, and it's hard when there are family members involved. I have a couple of clients where they're husband and wife, or brother and sister in the same organization, in the same leadership team. And so that, that trickles down. That's what's being role modeled for everyone else, is that family dynamic. And so sometimes it takes coaching, because that's not to say that you can't have family on your team. You certainly can, but you have to remind them that, like, hey, when you walk through these doors, you have to act like coworkers, because behaviors that are okay for husband and wives, like to vent about someone you work with or say off the cuff remarks, that might be okay for a brother or sister, but not for a CFO and a COO. That's not the relationship that we need everyone to see.
And inevitably, that family terminology comes about because of people being scared to do the right thing, and so they want to engender higher performance by making people feel safe.
Well, absolutely.
But not necessarily putting accountability on them and holding them to the results, so that they're paid proportionate to the output.
Right.
And so it's easier to say family. It's easier.
Well, and so another example that I have, and I'm going to try to keep the names out of this in case anyone's watching. But one was where I was really trying to just understand why this particular guy was being kept, right? Like, he was challenging to work with. He wasn't performing all that well. Like, I thought it was the institutional knowledge at first. Like, okay, well, tell me, like, if he walked out tomorrow, what would be your biggest gap? And I was like, well, he knows all the passwords. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see. Yep, we have an SOP with all these passwords. So it was like checking off thing after thing after thing that they thought was the reason they were keeping this person around. And then, like, weeks of discussing this, we finally were able to pull it out. It was a loyalty thing. It was them as a founder, this person leaving their big, well-paying corporate job and coming to help them start, and, you know, taking a pay cut and being with them through the trenches. And now the role has outgrown the person. Like, they're not performing in the role, but there's still so much loyalty there as a founder when people come in and they're taking a chance on you, that I think it's really hard for leaders to get around.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that, well, I don't know, at least 3 times a year. I see it happening at a very senior level too, where they have been accommodated to the detriment of the whole team, and they don't take any action. Again, goes back to they're scared. They're scared to be to incur some emotional outcome. They don't want to do that difficult thing. But kicking the can down the road only increases the severity of when you do have to do it, because then they'll say, "You never told me the last 3 years. You never told me that I was not performing. Why am I being held accountable now? Why is this so late? I could have changed a long time ago." It's a lesson that I've always said to my clients. You're not actually being kind when you don't bring up the topics, when you don't address them. So
no, absolutely, because you're right. The longer that it goes on, the more the person is blindsided when the feedback does come out.
Correct. And inevitably, the managers themselves are so frustrated that the feedback comes a lot more harsh, a lot more, with a lot more emotion than if they just said it at the start when it happened, addressed it. Right? It builds up.
Yeah. And typically what I see with that as well is the person on the receiving end of it, they're like, deep down, they're not totally surprised by it, right? No. Like they know if they're not doing a good job, but they kind of are like, all right, well, they're keeping me around, and so it must be good enough. And so it's almost a little like, it's just better for everyone else. Like, just have the conversation. You know?
Yes. Tell us about number 4 after number 3.
Oh, okay. Hang on. I got to go back in order now.
Yeah. Team over family.
Yes. Team over family, boxes over names, and then strengths over weaknesses. The other, and this is actually for any company of any size, of any stage, outcomes over activities. I see so many people just doing things, just doing stuff. I'm like, well, why? Like, I need to post on social media every day. And I'm like, okay, but like, why? Why are you doing it? Are you trying to generate leads? Are you trying to, how are you going to know? Like, it's not just the activity of posting that you want to do. You want to get something out of it. And so I see that happening, you know, to put it towards your audience for founders and smaller businesses. The more you grow, and you're not directly kind of talking every day to people, and they're hearing your vision and they're hearing what your goals are, the further away people get from being able to tie their day-to-day work to what the business goals are. And so you have to keep that communication and just keep it like top of mind. Otherwise, people, you know, when people start feeling that like job security, they just start doing shit, right? Like, they're like, I'm going to do this project. I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to have this big presentation. And it's like, well, why are we doing this? Like, let's get some outcomes. And I see this, I've done this myself as an HR leader, right? When I've been in companies where I know, or I see what they need to do, but the appetite is not there from the leaders and the buy-in, which it has to be for people strategy. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I need to do something. I'll just do an employee engagement survey. Let her rip. Like, I'll just find things to do. So I've personally fallen victim to it as well, right? Because you want some sort of self-worth. You want some sort of job security. So you just start doing stuff. But that's not the way to run a business. Sometimes you get lucky and it works, you know, sometimes you get lucky and you're posting on social media every day and you do generate 5 leads a day. But if you can get really good at getting those metrics clear, I mean, the sky's the limit, right? Just getting everyone pointed in the right direction.
Good.
Yeah, but sometimes just CEO, founder telling what the goals are does not mean people can translate that into the right activities.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like you either need to recognize it and then explain to yourself as a founder, or if you're at that size, that's why you need those managers and directors to translate it for you, because you can't be everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It has to be clear. It has to be clear.
Number 5. Tell us number 5. I'm enjoying it.
Oh my gosh. All right. Number 5. So I talked about this a little bit earlier around like, I'm not peddling HR playbooks. And I see so many leaders that are founders that are come in and they'll be like, well, you were at Google. How did Google do this? And I'm like, you're a 30-person like e-commerce company. It's not the same. That playbook's not going to work. So custom over playbooks is my next rule. And the reason that I think a lot of leaders come in and they want these playbooks, or they're part of these groups and they're like, well, they did this and then they did this, is really kind of just an insecurity because they don't know what to do. Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, then I'm just going to do a playbook. And I'm like, well, let's solve the problem. Let's do some critical thinking here. Like, it's very easy to do a playbook, but it's a lot harder to say like, okay, your employees don't feel like you're listening to their feedback. We could do this engagement survey that everyone and their mother does, or we can figure out what it is they're trying to say and what's the best way for them to say it. And maybe it's one-on-ones. Maybe it's you do a town hall. Maybe it is a survey. Maybe the safety's not there for people to bring things up and they want to be able to be behind a screen and putting their answer. So you really have to, as a leader, yes, those playbooks and what your friend did and what you learned in business school that's great foundation. But when you're out there in the trenches on the front lines, like you're going to have to make decisions for yourself and for your company that are individual. And that is scary. That's very scary, right? Like I will say, starting this HR business myself, it was like, what do I do? Like, hang on a second. I will never forget the story I always tell is one of the first companies I worked with, I needed to do an H-1B visa. And I was like, oh God. And in my mind, I'm thinking immigration@google.com. That's who I used to email when I had an H-1B visa for Google employees. And I'm like, I ain't got no immigration@Google anymore. I got to get online. I got to figure this out. And so, you got to break the playbook. You got to figure out like, all right, this is now this company's process for how we're going to do visas. So yeah, it's scary to make your own decisions.
It's necessary. If people want to grow, they have to go through pain, and you only get to experience pain when you make more decisions. That's it.
Yeah.
You have to kiss a lot of frogs to get to your prince.
You have to kiss a lot of frogs. And that kind of goes back to that opening comment. Like, I'm definitely not teaching people how to fail, but I'm teaching them how to recover, how to quickly recover from failing. Good. And not make the same mistake over and over.
Good. I agree with that.
And you do the same thing. You're doing the same thing with your folks too.
Yeah. In the end, they can't learn without pain. Number 2, the fit ones recover from their intense workout with less time. Mm-hmm. So why not also bounce back quickly, shake the dust off and say, okay, learning lesson, let's move forward. Mm-hmm. And they're that much smarter for having gone through their own painful, customized journey. When it comes to custom over playbooks, I talked to a gentleman today. I said, why are you successful in generating revenue with teams? He said something that was really insightful. Very first comment, I do rather than think. I said, what? I do rather than think. I just plunge in. And what happens is I get slapped real fast as to what's appropriate and what's not. Mm-hmm. But I learn and then I change and adapt. And I'm so much faster at adapting through those mistakes than if I had sat in an ivory tower planning and scheming with a huge team. Right. I just go and do. So I'm able to succeed and lead teams to success because I've done it and I always do it, so that I know how they can follow the same recipe.
Yeah,
They can follow the
absolutely.
recipe.
Well, and showing that as a leader and that quick recovery is huge. Like I see it in organizations that are super innovative and, they have a fail quick culture, right? And they have and this is, I promise anyone that's listening, we did not plan this, but this does go into my next rule, number 6.
Okay.
Which is challenging ideas over people. So in order for this to work, in order for you to try to try a new process, try a new sales tactic, try a new, product feature, you have to have an environment where people are going to challenge your ideas, but not challenge you as a person. And you, like, as employees, you have to hire people that thrive in that environment, that aren't going to take things personal and can separate, like, oh, they're challenging this sales strategy. They're not challenging if I'm smart enough to develop the strategy. They're challenging, oh, is LinkedIn ads really the best way that we're going to spend our money? And being able to not take that personal is like such a leadership skill that I think a lot of us are lacking. And I'm even lacking it, right? When I try to get out of my HR comfort zone as a leader of Amplēo, and we're talking about different things, and I say something and it's like, no, that doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh my God, they think I'm so stupid because I'm just the HR leader. And like, here she goes again, trying to talk finance. And it's like, nope. They were just challenging the idea. They don't think I'm stupid, but it's a hard thing to do. Even now, like where I am in my career and at my age, I mean, I still get slapped in the face with it all the time, where it's like, this is not about me. This is about the idea. And as a leader, being able to set the tone for that with your leadership team and hire people that have that quality is just going to make that fail fast and innovation just work.
Can we take?
Go ahead. This is go ahead. I want to dig into this one.
Yeah, Abby, you're the expert. How can we interview such that we don't get a bad rotten apple?
Yeah,
They look shiny. They should look. This is a typical bait and switch. How can we reduce the cognitive dissonance? Yeah.
So I like a mix of behavioral and hypothetical questions in an interview. And typically at the onset of kicking off a process, we go through here are the competencies for this job. So solutions oriented, or what we're talking about now. They have a thick skin. They will throw ideas out there and they will challenge their peers' ideas, but not challenge their peers, and they can pull themselves away for it. So for example, with something like this, with a behavioral question, which is backward looking. So tell me about a time where your peers disagreed with you about an idea that you had or how you were running a project. Because then you hear how, what it was. And then you ask more questions like, all right, tell me about that. How did that make you feel? What would you have done differently? What was the outcome of this? So those behavioral questions can get real insight into how they've handled it in the past. And then the hypothetical, which is more on their feet, forward looking, is how would you handle X, Y, and Z? So how would you handle a peer challenging your idea for a new product strategy or a new CRM, right? You want to bring a new CRM. How would you handle your peers challenging you about the cost, about the functionality, about the, different integrations that it has? Because then you get how they then cross-functionally work and how they deal with conflict and how they, and then you kind of poke and prod a little bit with your follow-up questions to see if you can get under their skin and ask and just see how they respond. So I use hypotheticals and behavioral in parallel in interviews to test different competencies.
And if they say it never happened, nobody ever rejected my offers as a red flag. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But then
can I?
if if that is like just a tip for recruiting, and sometimes with lower level positions, you are going to find things like this. Because it could also just be a red flag about the company they were at, where they didn't have an environment where you could bring up ideas, or they didn't, it was all very siloed and they didn't have cross-functional conversations. But that's when you immediately flip that into a hypothetical and say, oh, okay, how would you handle it if you were presented with this?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I turn the table a little bit on this topic? Instead of the founder trying to hire somebody that has a thick skin, let's say they hire somebody, the right person, and this founder, it's hypothetically, has 30
Perfect.
people. 30 people, they got the company up to $5 million. They're like, I'm good at this. And then this new hire says, you're wrong about that idea, Miss Boss, to the founder. And,
Right.
and the founder is, oh my God, like, I built this company so far. I can't be seen as I'm making mistakes in my decisions. I make 100 decisions a day, and what if the other ones are wrong? Look, how are we gonna coach founders found themselves in this situation that they had an idea and this new employee is saying maybe that idea is not the best idea?
Well, we're going to rewind back to number one, where the leader focuses on their strengths and not their weaknesses. And maybe the other person that they're dealing with this is their strength, right? Maybe they're disagreeing about, like, I'm going to try to be engineering here. If they're using JavaScript or Python, is that even a thing? Does that make sense at all? Yes, no.
Yes,
So let's say that they're arguing over something like that. Maybe, Mr. Founder, guess what? You've been too out of the weeds for the last 5 years. You don't know what's actually really happening down here on ground zero. So let me, as new employee, this is my strength. Let me tell you about it. So I think a lot of founders are going to find themselves in that situation as they keep growing, right? You can't be the best at everything. You have to figure out what is the value you can add, and then hire everyone else to do the other things. But you got to check your ego. So, like, in the moment, you got to take a breath and check your ego and just ask, it's your job to facilitate that conversation as a leader. Tell me what you're thinking. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Help, play this out for me. How do you see this working? How do you see, what I propose working? Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to learn something from it. You may still go with your original plan and your original decision, but I bet you that you're smarter from having that conversation. And not only that, but you've now opened the door for that person to bring more ideas to you. And the people around them are seeing this culture of discussion and collaboration and innovation. And that those are just the fundamentals that you want in any business.
Yeah. Binoy, what do you say? Because, you and I have seen so many times, like a lot of stories are created in the founder's head from the fears they have, right? Like if a founder is even thinking about, oh my God, I don't have time for this discussion. We need to run fast. And like, these are all fears.
Yeah. And I'm going back to what Abby said just a moment ago. The inability of the founder to be self-aware is one challenge. The inability to see what a person can ultimately deliver after the song and dance of the courtship called recruiting, that's another topic. And if I may, I want to bring up the topic specific to one title that always gives trouble to our CEOs, and that's hiring the right sales leader.